partnerships suck. I'm telling you, they're hard. He goes, look at divorce rates, and those people sleep together. You're only one relationship away from changing your future. And I have said this 100, if not 1,000 times. It was years ago when I was in a different business and I had this business partner who there was trust. There was definitely trust. And we were kind of going, it was like left hand, right hand. We didn't really understand what the other one was doing per se. And so I'm out trying to grow the business. She's out managing some things. And I remember when the wheels started to fall off. You know, part of the organization we were with, some of our other people in the company, there was a perception that some things were happening and they weren't. When you lose that faith and you lose that trust, it starts to fall apart. We'd sort of now kind of started our own thing and we're running this business. And I remember I got a letter. It was from a credit card company and it was addressed to me. And I'm like, I don't even have a credit card with this company, but it had like my account number and everything. And I started to say, here's the balance and here's what you owe. You know, this is going to a settlement. And I was like, wait, what's happening? And so I confront this business partner with it. And she's like, well, I don't know why your name's on that. It shouldn't be on it. And it was all this like legitimate excuse. And if you've ever been involved with someone like this, it all makes sense. So everything that she was saying, I was like, oh, I guess I could see why that maybe would be. But again, I was trusting. This is where the great lesson comes in. It's like trust, but verify. I trusted that what she was telling me made sense. And so one day she comes to me and she says, hey, you know, there's this thing with our taxes, our tax accountant did, and we're getting this credit back, but you know, I had to pay for the taxes to be done. So I'm going to keep the credit as offsetting that. I'm like, okay, again, trust, but verify. I didn't verify that. Well, things started to fall apart. And one day I'm in the office and I see a credit card statement on this pile and it has our business name on it. I'm like, but I don't have that credit card. All of a sudden, you know, that internal feeling like that just kicked to the stomach. I'm like, I don't have that credit card. I've never known we had a credit card with that company. I grabbed the statement, I pulled it out and I started reading through it and I'm seeing things like dinners at restaurants. I'm seeing tires for a car at discount tires. I'm seeing all this personal stuff. And then I see the payments and I started looking at our bank account and I'm like, oh, our bank account is paying for this card, you know, $200 or $300 a month, which clearly wasn't enough for the amount that was being spent. It was just making the minimum payment. And I think the balance was somewhere between $12,000 or $15,000 at that time. So again, I confront about it. And this time I get nothing but sort of this rage, this like anger that I would question and so then I kind of knew something was going on. Within a week, she and one of our employees decided they were going to part ways, split our company, and they were going to go a different direction, which was fine. But it was months later, I started getting more notices and phone calls and letters dropped at the office that things that were in our name that I needed to pay for. And so one day I decided after a few texts and phone calls that I hadn't heard anything back, I decided I knew where they lived. I was going to go to their house. I went to their house and moved out, gone. And so here's the thing though. What I realized in that moment through this lesson and what you want to realize when you get into business partnerships, there was so many people from the outside that was like blame and all this stuff. The reality is the blame's on me. It's not on them. Yeah, I didn't make that decision. I didn't make those purchases. I didn't do any of that stuff. But I think what was really hard for outside people to understand is that I have to take accountability. I wasn't watching close enough. I wasn't having deep enough conversations to understand what was happening. I wasn't verifying. I was just trusting. I wasn't diving into those credit card statements. I wasn't getting really into the mix of it. I just wasn't paying attention. Call it naive, call it inexperience, whatever it is. I wasn't paying attention. Here's the important piece. Yes, it took me a couple years to get some of those I settled with, some I had to go to court and settle on. But the reality is this, it was a great lesson to understand that I have to be involved. I have to be accountable. So if you're in a business partnership that isn't going the right way, then here's a couple of key things to do. Sit down and have a conversation. Don't wait, don't push it off, confront the issues. Not in a confrontational, angry way, but just confront it. Don't let it linger. So after you've confronted the issue, I think the bigger thing is now to set parameters, or if you go into a relationship, set parameters for the organization, for decision-making, for financials, for all of that. While some look from the outside and say, this was such a terrible thing, and yes, it hurts and it's a kick to the stomach. What I realized the most from it was it's a blessing in disguise, because as I started this new business and as I added partners, it taught me some things that I needed to have in place. You know, people are people and they're gonna make decisions, and sometimes under duress, they make difficult and bad decisions, and I'm not perfect either. And so it's just by having things in place that allow me and any of my partners partners in business to make decisions based on the agreements, not the expectations. That was one of the other challenges. We had expectations from each other, but my expectations of her and hers of me were never written down. They weren't an agreement. And I have another video that you can reference and go to about how to create that agreement in a partnership. I remember this guy had some bad partnerships and now had turned them around and was running a very successful real estate company. And he's like, oh, partnerships suck. He's like, I'm telling you, they're hard. He goes, look at divorce rates, and those people sleep together. You're in business together. Like, I mean, it's hard enough. Wow, this is so hard. Business partnerships are not easy. Somebody you choose to be with and are married to, that's a challenge and can be tough at times. And yet here you're in business together and you're trying to navigate this thing. It's so important to have agreements. It's so important to trust, but verify. And that creates accountability, and that actually builds trust. Because if you're my business partner and I tell you something and you're like, yeah, I trust you, but can I see it? Yeah, absolutely. And I present it and I show you and I validate it, that just builds more trust every single time. So that's an important piece to this. Look, as you build partnerships, make sure that you find people that fit your values. And if they don't, then don't get into partnership. Take some build-up time to figure out if you're gonna work together. This is an important piece. And if you're just starting your business, don't shy away from partnerships just because you hear someone like me has had a bad experience. Actually, in every one of my businesses, I still have business partners. And that's because, again, those relationships can take me to the next level. It's just that I've learned some lessons along the way of how to make them successful. Always remember, you're only one relationship away from changing your future.